often. Now, maybe I should do it more often. And maybe I say, hey, shut up. What you're talking about is irrelevant to where the American people are. Let me tell you what's going on in this country. Maybe I should do that. But trust me, virtually every interview we do, we have to fight. You know, on this one, I think what I ended up doing is saying what I was talking about is whether or not we think it's proper for the United States to go around overthrowing governments, whether it's the Bay of Pigs in Cuba, whether it's overthrowing Salvador Allende, overthrowing Mossadegh in Iran, or whatever it may be. But, yeah.
Yeah, and the framing sets it up for the audience, and so that's why it's important. Now let's move on to the issue of electability and how the media has covered that as well. So this is really the last media question. So we have covered all the different polls because that's what we do. We cover the news here. And let me show you how you do in the last two polls, but I can go back at least a dozen polls and give you the same results. Quinnipiac poll that just came out, Hillary Clinton actually does pretty well against Donald Trump. She's beating him 46 to 40. Now, you against Trump, it appears that you have a significantly larger lead. What is that, 14 points as opposed to the 6-point lead that she had. Now, let's go against Ted Cruz. She's got a 3-point lead, almost within the margin of error there. You have an 11-point lead and against the same Ted Cruz. Now, it's not an outlier. It's not just one poll. I'll show you a CNN poll. CNN says Hillary Clinton is beating Donald Trump by 12 points. That's good. That is very positive. If you're a Democrat, you like that poll. Well, are you going to do as well in a CNN poll? No, you're beating him by 20 points. And then you go to Clinton versus Cruz. She's tied. She's tied with Ted Cruz. She's tied
that's
with
scary
Ted Cruz.
business, isn't
it? You're beating Ted Cruz by 13 points. Right. Yet, you know what? I'm going to show you one more clip here from the media because they talked about your electability on air on CNN. And I believe this is clip 8, Begala clip. Yes. Let's listen to Begala, then Anderson Cooper tell the American people who's more electable.
Bernie has a very powerful message. But I think a lot of the people who vote for him want to send a message rather than pick a president. And it may be, it's just a theory, I don't have data, it may be that the violence and the talk of violence at Trump rallies said something to Democrats like, whoa, we need to pick a president here, not just send a message. And that I think Democrats mostly think Hillary's a stronger general election candidate. They haven't been voting that way everywhere, especially younger people. And I wonder if the level of seriousness in the campaign on the Democratic side just
it would be interesting to see if electability started to get higher than shares my values.
Now, that's interesting because Anderson Cooper there at the end seemed to suggest very strongly that Hillary Clinton is more electable, even though a CNN poll clearly shows the opposite. Again, why do you think they do that? And do you think it's just an honest mistake?
No, it's not an honest mistake. It is. I mean, here is the example. You have the facts right in front of them, and they can avoid those facts based on ideology. Look, at the end of the day, and I say this without any disrespect, Hillary Clinton is the establishment candidate, right? She's the one who's getting $15 million from Wall Street, money from the drug companies, money from the fossil fuel industry, has all the governors and the senators and members of Congress supporting her. Okay, that's who these guys want. They're scared to death. They get scared to death at the idea that young people are actually getting involved in the political process and want real change. The working class people are saying, you know what, we need to end establishment politics and economics and move in a different direction. That is their nightmare. And that's what you're seeing there.
Senator Sanders, are you charging that these multi-billion-dollar corporations that run the media might be part of the establishment?
That's a hard one, Jake. Why do you ask me such hard, difficult questions? That is the establishment. And by the way, you know, when I talk, you know, in most of my speeches, I say, look, we're taking on powerful economic interests, we're taking on Wall Street, we're taking on the entire political establishment, and we are taking on the corporate media. And the corporate media is right in the middle of this. And all of my speeches, what I tell people is, don't accept the status quo or the options. You know, sometimes people will go, well, Cenk, as you know, we have a very large deficit, and you know, we have to cut. Now, do you think we should cut Social Security or Medicare? I really want your honest opinion on that one. Those are the options that you're given day in and day out, rather than saying, well, actually, maybe we should ask the billionaires to stop paying their fair share of taxes or end tax loopholes of corporations. Never part of that discussion.
So now let us move on to those harder questions. Now, a lot of people in the movement have decided that you are their leader, partly because you're running for president. But you look at some recent polls of millennials; they have you as by far the most popular politician, but they actually have you as more popular as a person they'd like to meet above Beyonce. Okay, now, that's a hell of a thing, right?
Yes.
But you have convinced them that Hillary Clinton is the establishment candidate. If you were to lose, and the Democratic Party comes to you and says, okay, now take this movement that is full of energy and is against the establishment and make sure they vote for the establishment candidate, what do you say?
Well, what I say, number one, I'm not big into being a leader. I much prefer to see a lot of leaders and a lot of grassroots activism. Number two, what we do is together as a nation, as a growing movement, is we say, all right, if we don't win, and by the way, we are in this thing to win, please understand that. What is the Democratic establishment going to do for us?
Oh, that's interesting.
All right, for example, right now, you have a Democratic establishment which has written off half the states in this country. You know that.
Mm-hmm.
And they have given up on the state in the South, the Rocky Mountain area. Are they going to create a 50-state party? Are they going to welcome into the Democratic Party the working class of this country and young people, or is it going to be a party of the upper middle class and the cocktail crowd and the heavy campaign contributors, which to a significant degree it is right now? I've talked to Democratic Party leaders and said, you know what? Instead of going around and raising all kinds of money from wealthy people, why don't you meet in some football stadium and bring out 50 or 100,000 people, bring the damn Senate in there, Senate Democrats, and start talking to people, ask them what they want you to do. How about that? Radical. So in other words, if I can't make it, and we're going to try as hard as we can till the last vote is cast, we want to completely revitalize the Democratic Party and make it a party of the people rather than just one of large campaign contributors.
Now, normally politicians would ask for something for them, cabinet post, et cetera. But I'm going to assume that whether you are going to ask for that, or I don't know, and you wouldn't say here. Anyway, let's assume for the moment of being that you're not going to ask for that. If you're going to ask for policy positions, as you just indicated, what are the policy positions that you would want?
Okay. I want Secretary Clinton, if she's the nominee, to come out for a Medicare for all, single-payer health care system. I want $15 an hour as a minimum wage. I want to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure. Flint, Michigan is not the only community in America that doesn't have safe drinking water. Our roads, bridges, rail system is in disrepair. I want a vigorous effort to address climate change. I am very worried. I talk to these scientists. This planet is in serious danger. And you can't cuddle up to the fossil fuel industry. You got to take them on. And also, what is resonating, and I believe very important, making public colleges and universities tuition-free, Wall Street tax on speculation to pay for that, ending all these corporate loopholes. Those are some of the demands we make.
So if the Clinton campaign were to promise you that they would take significant action in some of those areas, the question is, would you believe them? And so let me run specific things by you. She says now that she's against the Trans-Pacific Partnership. She had been previously in favor of it. When she becomes president, do you really believe that she will maintain this position and be against TPP, or will she flip and sign that agreement?
Well, you know a guy named Tom Donahue, who's the head of the Chamber of Commerce.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, what he said is, don't worry about what she said in the campaign. She's just trying to match Bernie Sanders. If she's elected, I think she'll be okay on the TPP. Did you read that?
Yes. So what do you think? Do you think she's going to flip on that again?
I think what we need is to create a movement which holds elected officials accountable and not let them flip on that issue. That's what you need to do.
And how about money in politics? Now, here's a family that has raised $1 billion between Bill and Hillary Clinton for their campaigns. They have raised $150 million for themselves personally through paid speeches. Do you believe a family that has benefited so much from money in politics is realistically going to fight, and you're going to need to fight really hard to get money out of politics?
Look, Cenk, all I can tell you is I think that Citizens United is one of the worst decisions ever rendered by a Supreme Court in American history. I think we got to overturn it yesterday. I think we need to move to public funding of elections. And that's one of the reasons that, one of the ways we revitalize American democracy. I mean, you've asked a very fair question, but I'm not going to answer it right now. You're asking me to speculate on her intentions and so forth. All I can say is we need, win or lose for me, a political revolution which starts electing people who are accountable to the working families of this country.
Well, let's stay on Citizens United for a second. Merrick Garland has been appointed or nominated by President Obama for the Supreme Court. In speech now, he seemed to back Citizens United. Now, some say, well, you know, there was that precedent already existed, but he actually went further and said that there should be unlimited contributions, let alone unlimited expenditures.
Sure.
So you've said that that you would have picked someone else.
Yes.
If he does get confirmed, are you confident that he would be against Citizens United?
No, I'm not. I mean, based on what you just told me and what we know to be the case. What I have said is, you know, the president has the right to nominate whoever he wants, and I will support that nomination. And what the Republicans continue to do is to obstruct, and that is absolutely wrong. But if I am elected, and if Garland is not seated, what I would do is ask him to step aside and ask the president to withdraw that nomination. So
are you confident that President Obama would withdraw the nomination if you asked him under those circumstances?
Well, who knows? Yeah, I think he would. I mean, I think if he is no longer the president, I think he would understand, and not quite proper that I'm left with somebody that he nominated as opposed to somebody who I nominated. And I will tell you this, let me be 100% clear. I will not nominate anybody who isn't straightforward and public about saying that person, that nominee, will overturn Citizens United. That is my litmus test.
Right. And how about President Obama himself? Do you think he's done enough to get money out of politics?
No. Look, I mean, I think I like the president. He's an incredibly smart guy. He has faced more obstructionism, and obviously because of the color of his skin, he has faced the kinds of disgusting opposition that is disgraceful. I think, you know, that money in politics is the major political crisis that we face right now. And I think he could have done more. I mean, he's clearly against Citizens United, no question about that. But I think he could have been more forthright and stronger in his opposition.
Do you think President Obama is the establishment or is fighting against the establishment?
I think probably both. I mean, I think he's, you know, do I think he has real views and real concerns deeply felt? And I think he does. You know, unlike some people, you know, who will go with the wind all the time. I think, you know, for example, closing down Guantanamo, not a popular position. He believes in it. He does believe in it in his heart and soul. You know, I think he gets very disturbed about the number of people we have in jail. It was brave of him to go to a jail. First president, long time, to actually visited a penitentiary, beginning the process of trying to lower our disgracefully high jail population. Yeah, I think, you know, I like him. I think he's a decent guy. But on the other hand, you know, it is not, as Hillary Clinton reminds us, he actually got more money from Wall Street than she did. That was her excuse. Hey, I get money from Wall Street, says Hillary, but Barack Obama got even more. Well, you know, do I think, for example, he stood up to Wall Street in the way that he should have? You know, as I go around the country and speak to people, a lot of things get them angry, but nothing gets them angrier than the fact that some kid smokes marijuana today, gets caught with marijuana, that kid gets a prison record, right? That's what happens. But what happens if you're a banker on Wall Street and you destroy the American economy because of illegal activity? And you pay, by the way, if you're Goldman Sachs, $5 billion in fines. $5 billion in a settlement with the federal government. And how many of these people are going to get criminal records? Zero. And that shows the American people the corruption of the system.
And so that happened under Bush, but it also happened under Obama.
Yes. Now, the president will tell you, as he's told me, that, look, what they did was atrocious and horrible. It wasn't illegal. I'm not so sure.
Okay. So now Hillary Clinton has started to turn already to the center. Now, you can tell that because during the debates with you, she constantly used President Obama as a shield, as you just alluded to. Well, Obama did it too. Obama did it too. Are you criticizing Obama?
Right.
And there's a lot of reasons why you would do that for political reasons in a primary, right? Yeah. And you have been slower to criticize President Obama, in my estimation, than you have been in the past. Okay, so I'm going to keep it real on that front. Now, having said that, it appears she's now done with that because at her AIPAC speech, she bragged about her policies to the reporters being more muscular than President Obama. And she said that she would immediately have Netanyahu over to the White House if she's president, setting up a contrast between herself and President Obama.
Right.
So it appears she is running what Washington would call the center, what I would call the right, now that she thinks she's on to a general election. One, is that condescending that she thinks she's done with the primaries? And two, what does that tell you about Hillary Clinton if her positions are ready to shift depending on the politics?
But that's been the criticism of Hillary Clinton from day one, and that is why, frankly, a lot of people don't trust her. I mean, you know, people say, oh, she's running against Bernie Sanders. Suddenly she's against the TPP. Suddenly she's against the Keystone Pipeline. Suddenly she wants to raise the minimum wage. Suddenly she wants to do this. Suddenly she wants to do that. She sounds like Bernie Sanders. And your point is, well, now she thinks she's won. Well, I don't think she has. Now she's doing something different. In terms of Israel, I gave a speech. I couldn't make the AIPAC thing. I really wanted to do it, but I was in the West Coast. And my speech was very different than Hillary Clinton's. I am 100% a supporter of Israel's right to exist. I was on a kibbutz for a number of months, but I was a young person.
Do they really question that with you? So you're the first Jewish candidate to ever win a primary in American history. You've won 12 contests. Do people think, well, I'm not sure you're sufficiently pro-Israel?
But, you know, on the other hand, what I understand is that in Gaza, unemployment is 44%. That community remains in destruction. There's massive poverty, massive water problems, massive problems. You cannot be a president of the United States without understanding that. I don't know how you bring peace to the Middle East if you're just one-sided. You got to embrace both people. And as a Jewish person, I have found, and this is so disturbing, so many similarities between Palestinians and Jews. Under proper circumstances, people can and should get along. I did some years ago, I got some money and I had a conference with a number of people from the Arab countries and Israel. You know what we talked about? Not politics. We talked about water, which is a huge crisis in that part of the world. And you had intelligent people sitting down. What do we do? How do we solve this problem? You know, I think it can be done, but I was not happy with Clinton's speech.
So, by the way, you had more Muslims voting for you in places in states like Michigan.
Yes.
Are you proud that as a Jewish candidate you got
I am very proud.
Overwhelming majority of Muslims to vote for you in America?
That is the best of America. And I sat down and I met with some of the Arab American leaders in Dearborn and elsewhere, and wonderful people, good people. And what we've got to do, and I don't tell you, Cenk, that I have any magical solution that others have not had. Clearly, there are awful people on both sides who, for their own political gains, are fomenting hatred, and there are very decent people on both sides who understand that the future is peace.
So when you're talking about the awful people on one of the sides, are you referring to Ted Cruz and Donald Trump?
No, I was, to say the least, probably Netanyahu would not be the first person that I would invite to the Oval Office.
Okay. And
all right. We should probably wrap it up.
Okay. So I want to end then by asking you about what you would do if you would win. Number one, the Clinton people say, oh, the Republicans are going to fight you tooth and nail. Do you think if Hillary wins, they're going to roll out the welcome mat for her?
They just love her. I mean, you know, over the years, they have just shown their enormous respect and affection for her. And I suspect the day after, they'll probably have some wonderful party, you know, in the Congress just saying how grateful and happy they are that she was elected. Look, given the severity of the crises that we face right now, what has got to happen, and I don't just use this rhetorically, we need a political revolution. And I'm beginning to see the seeds of that developing in this campaign, where working class people and young people begin to understand that it is imperative that they participate in the political process and that they demand a government which represents all of us, not just the few. So that's what we have got to do. I can't do it as president alone. We need that mass movement.
What do you do with that political revolution if you win? So how do you get the Republicans to go in the direction you're asking for with that revolution?
This is what you do. The Republicans are many things, but they're not dumb. And they understand that their agenda succeeds when nobody knows what their agenda is. I'm the ranking member of the Budget Committee. How many Americans do you think know that these guys want to cut Social Security, cut Medicare, cut Medicaid, cut education, cut or end the EPA, and give hundreds of billions of dollars in tax breaks to the top 0.2%. Think anybody in America knows that? Well, if I'm president of the United States, they will know that. And what you do is say to things like you get legislation introduced, for one example, to make public colleges and universities tuition-free with a tax on Wall Street speculation. That's going to come up on, September 19th, 2017, and every person in this country is going to know that vote. And they're going to know who's voting for it and who's going to be voting against it. You develop a grassroots mechanism. So you focus attention on that. You focus attention on the need for a national health care program and so forth. But you have to educate people, and you have to bring the grassroots in a much closer connection to what goes on in Congress.
If you win, is Hillary Clinton liberal enough to be in your cabinet?
Oh, stop getting me in trouble here. There are other people that I would probably go to before Hillary Clinton, people like Elizabeth Warren, for example.
All right, fair enough.
All right.
Bernie Sanders, thank you so much for joining us on the Young Turks. We appreciate it. We'll be right back with the rest of the show. Thank you, guys.